the train coming to Cedar City is revolutionary. And it's not something that had been all of a sudden someone had an idea to do it, right? So as you know, the Transcontinental Railroad connects up at Promontory Point in 1869, and Brigham Young is very adamant that, well, first of all, he thought he wanted them to connect, the Salt Lake should be the hub, but it became very clear that wasn't going to happen. I don't know if you're familiar with the Corinne, which was considered the Gentile capital of Utah. So Brigham Young was very adamant that not be where this kind of connection happens. So he uses a lot of the LDS Church's funds and labor to get the railroad to shift a little bit and bypass Corinne and end up in Ogden, which is why Ogden becomes kind of Junction City and it develops that way. But once that happens, he then uses a lot of funds from the church to invest in a north-south railroad, primarily up to, in Idaho and then down into the thought was it was going to go all the way to Las Vegas and then to California and through southern Utah. They get as far as Milford, about as far as that they develop over time as we compress years. And then from Milford, they just head through Nevada and into California.
Interesting.
So the Los Angeles Salt Lake Railroad exists for quite a while. There's always a discussion, if you look at the old Iron County Record articles, about maybe this is the year they're going to keep coming south and through Cedar City. And what really changes that is the iron, right? So Cedar City, of course, is founded by Mormon pioneers who were there to mine iron to create this kind of self-sufficiency in the frontier West. It doesn't go well. It doesn't last long because for a variety of reasons. And while iron continues to be processed and mined in the county for a while, you can only sell skillets and andirons to farmers for so long, right? And it's just logistically difficult to get things out. And
especially back then.
Yeah, especially back then. And in fact, at one point at Old Irontown, they had bought some rail and some train track and tried to get a little railroad going, but it wasn't happening. But in the 1920s, with this economic boom that comes after World War I, there is a need for that. I mean, we still have west of us here the second largest deposit of iron ore in the country.
Yeah, I mean, we have Utah Iron here locally, and they sell internationally.
Yeah. So with this idea of iron becoming critical, that's a big push to move a spur into Iron Springs. From the railroad, like the junction was at Lund, which is about 10 miles west of us here, maybe. And at Lund at one time, they had a very nice depot designed by a very famous architect. And that was where, when you caught the railroad, you took a coach or a wagon or whatever out to Lund, and that's where everything was picked up.
Gotcha.
Even when they're building the university. So
they were transloading by horse and buggy.
Absolutely, they were transloading. Sorry, we have a. That's a great point. We have a huge history of transloading.
Interesting.
Right here. So people and goods and everything else. I mean, even the boiler for Old Main was brought in that way.
Interesting.
So the push was, let's do iron. Let's think about an easier way to move iron in. Now, at the same time, there has been a big push by the railroads to develop national parks. So, Yellowstone's in the 1860s, Yosemite's a little bit before that. Railroads see those as vehicles to drive rail traffic. And that's nothing new, right? I mean, Coney Island is developed because the New York Railroad says, let's put something as far out as we can. So the only way to get there is to take our trains during the weekend when ridership is down.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new for railroads. And so Yellowstone and others, Union Pacific has been doing that. The residents of Cedar City have been thinking really hard about the iron on their cliffs that are rusting, right? The red rock and everything else. So they have worked to develop some kind of tourism economy. In fact, before Union Pacific, we had the Perry brothers who would go out to Lund and pick people up and take them down into these new national monuments.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I do want to dive into the Perry brothers a little bit here.
Which will become Zion and all that other kind of stuff. So that work is already happening. UP had already done stuff like that at Yellowstone and had been very successful in that. The 1915 Pan American Exposition, they had actually rebuilt Yellowstone
Oh,
in a mile-long diorama with an exploding Old Faithful that you could walk around. And other railroads had done things at the South Rim and other places. So they were already looking in ways to develop that. So it's this combination. And again, 1923, end of World War I. World War I is over in 1918. The American economy is booming. The automobile is now taking off.
right.
So tourism is a big deal. But remember, it's not until 1916 that the Park Service is even formed, right? So it's relatively new. It's not even 10 years old. Right. When they start working here. So they don't have any money to invest in infrastructure at the parks. The railroads do. Right. So what our enterprising forefathers and mothers of Cedar City do is they say, look, we've got iron, we've got access to people. And so Union Pacific agrees. They bring the guy down, he looks it over, and they love it. And so they finally build a spur from Lund into Cedar City.
Gotcha.
So the train can come in, they build a depot, they build a big hotel on Main Street, and that opens up Southern Utah, right? I mean, so it's not just tourists and miners, but Hollywood comes because of the train.
Right.
I mean, it just changes everything.
Right.